Hello, I'm Karen Midier, and I am going to be talking about why do we need to plan for retirement. I hope all of you who are joining me will be able to begin to appreciate what happens when you think about retiring and why do you need to plan for it. Most of the times we definitely plan for the financial part of retirement. I mean, we meet with our financial planners or with our spouse or whoever, trying to figure out what are we going to do financially so we can afford to retire. But many people who I see have either gone and retired, or they're close to thinking about retiring and they're terrified and they're trying to figure out when to pull the trigger, or they're retired and they are experiencing a lot of discomfort and they come into my psychotherapy practice because of that. So my experience with all of this began about 12 years ago when I started to work with older adults, and I ended up deciding to specialize in working with the whole area of seniors. I had been working at a nursing home for a couple of years, and so that gave me some of the hands-on experience working with older adults. But I also had retired. I decided to retire early. I took a couple of years off from my psychotherapy practice and then realized that this wasn't really for me, and I missed what I was doing before and decided to get my job. I actually had closed my practice and then I had to restart it, and specialized in seniors. So when I have people that come into my office, one of the things that they usually come to my office for is they say to me, I'm lost. I don't know who I am anymore. My friends are all working and I don't know what to do with my time, and I don't know how to make new friends. I just am spending all this time in front of the TV and I feel like a couch potato, and I don't want to be like my grandparents or my parents were. This is not how I thought retirement was going to be. And I'm just not sure what to do with all this time. So we begin by looking at your life, and we do a whole history where you kind of go back to all the things that you enjoyed doing when you were a kid, maybe even high school and college. What were your hobbies then? What things did you try? What things did you hate? What things did you love? And at least we have all of your life experience to figure out what it is that. So part of what we also begin to look at is creating a routine. Because one of the things that happens when people no longer work is they don't have either a reason to get up in the morning, or they don't have any particular person that they're reporting to. So now you have to begin to report to yourself and come up with what you want to do in your day. And so coming up with structure is part of what we initially do. Is, from, do you exercise in the morning? Do you just enjoy having a cup of coffee and sitting in front of the TV? But how long are you sitting in front of the TV? Is it 30 minutes, or does it go to half a day? Or do you watch every soap opera that's out there? Or what else are you going to do with that time? We look at what your physical health is, and coming up with things like that. So we decide if there's an exercise routine, and if you don't have an exercise routine, what kind of exercise do you like to do? Do you go for a walk? Do you play tennis? Do you like to play golf? Do you end up meeting friends and maybe doing some stuff together? Or do you maybe need a personal trainer? That's what I do. I know if it's left to me, I don't do it, so I kind of I have an accountability partner. I have a personal trainer I work with twice a week. And so I have somebody that, I block out the time for, so I make sure I get my exercise in. The other things that we explore is ways to keep your brain continuing to function. Because as we get older, the most important thing we can do is to make sure that we're constantly exercising our brain and our thinking. And so there's lots of different ways that you can do that. And you can either look at some lifelong learning opportunities, you can go back to school, not necessarily to get grades, because I don't like doing that either, but you can take lots of classes for free online, or you could go to something like the OLLI program, which is a special program across the country at many of the different colleges, where people have a combination of in-person, and these days, now we even have online opportunities to meet with really interesting professors and small groups, so you can take courses to learn about anything and everything you ever wanted to learn about. So those are things that can exercise your mind and your thinking. And then the other things that you might look at is, do you have any hobbies? What kind of hobbies do you enjoy doing? Do you sew? Do you do, I have some of my clients who decide they want to go and begin to learn to do art. I mean, art is a big passion for a lot of older adults. And so they start to take classes, and or maybe they had done some art before and they begin to re-explore what it's like to begin to do some different kinds of art mediums. And so that's an idea that somebody can do. And the other thing is looking at volunteer opportunities. You would think that volunteering would be an easy thing to do, but these days there's a lot of applications in the volunteering world, and although opportunities exist, sometimes you need to begin to find places to explore where then, other than Meals on Wheels, can you go to offer your time. And whether or not it's with animals, or whether or not it's with people or kids, or maybe your interest has to do with the environment, or maybe it was, right now we just had all this political stuff. I've had clients who did a lot of canvassing and making sure people got votes out. Is that the sort of thing that really floats your boat? So anything and everything that you do is important for you to be able to do moving forward as you begin to find ways of exploring and filling your time in something that feels meaningful for you. In terms of the big picture, one of the big issues that people say to me is, like they feel like they've lost their life purpose, because now, they've raised their family, they are maybe thinking of retiring and letting their job go, or they are at that crossroads and they're not sure why they're here anymore. And so they're in an existential crisis. And so part of what we do is begin to look at life purpose and what is meaningful now. What are the values that are important to you? Is it family? Is it the environment? Is it learning? Is it, just, getting better at the kinds of things that you've done before? learning to use a computer. All these things are opportunities for you to, to explore and figure out what it is that you would like to do. And some of my clients decide, you know what, I want to go back to work. I don't necessarily want to do the kind of work I was doing before, but maybe I want to go part-time, or maybe I want to develop my own business. Maybe not a big scale, but there are many people who have begun businesses in their 60s and 70s and have started huge organizations. I think McDonald's was started when he was in his later 60s. So, there are many people that have gone later on in life and decided that now is my time to be able to do whatever it is that I decide I want to create. And I have all this knowledge that people want to continue to do. So, who do I want to be now? Because I do not want to feel invisible. And many of the complaints that I get from clients is that, they feel like they're invisible when they go out, even when they go to the grocery stores, people don't notice them. And so doing anything for you to end up feeling competent and that you're contributing helps you feel like, you're there for a reason and you're not invisible. Telling people what you're doing versus just saying, I'm retired, you can say, I'm retired, and these are the things that I spend my time doing. Sometimes I end up, helping kids after school, or sometimes I, am a grandparent who is very actively involved with my grandchildren. Sometimes they're, you take care of them when they're little, and you help their parents when they need to actually have them pick them up from preschool or maybe the early school years. Or I have some older adults who are sometimes in their 80s, and they're working with their high school grandchildren, teaching them how to drive. I don't know why they would put themselves in those positions, but they do, and it really helps them develop those relationships with their grandchildren and as older young adults. And it's so much fun to watch these 80-year-olds eyes light up as they describe the kinds of things that they begin to do for the young adult high school students that they still have a relationship with. I remember when my kids were doing things with their grandma, and those were the kinds of things that created such a strong bond between their grandmas, and unfortunately they lost their grandpa early, so that didn't really get a chance to happen, but their grandmas were both very important in their lives, and still are now, and they still make special trips to go back and see their grandma because of how important she was in those early years and then later on in their lives growing up. So, do not hesitate to see if there's a way to continue to nurture these relationships over the years, to be able to continue to be active and involved in your family's relationship. Because it's important to figure out, who do you want to be when you grow up? I know that was, kind of what you were dealing with as an adolescent, but we get to explore that again as older adults. There's no more shoulds. There's an awful lot of what we want to do and what we can dream of doing, there's no reason that we have to just kind of tamp down the idea of the old grandparents. My old grandparents, they went to Florida, they, sat by the beach, and, they kind of, did their beach thing with their friends, and that was their life. And, for some people that may just be fine. But if you want to keep your health, and you want to keep your cognitive health, and you want to keep your physical health going, becoming active is incredibly important to be able to keep you vital and vibrant as you continue to get older. And there's the younger old in their 60s, and then there's the mid old in their 70s, and then the older old in the 80 and above. And I've worked with people in their 90s who are continuing to be, they love going to their little classes, they love having family get-togethers and gatherings. Sometimes they don't do it themselves anymore. They may just be the participant because they've, launched, the family has launched the, the torch has been passed to their either their children or their grandchildren. But they still want to be a part of their children's lives. So, are there any other questions that people have about what it's like to be a older adult and plan for retirement and figure out why? Because it just doesn't happen without planning. And I think, the reasons that people continue to come into my office is sometimes they're depressed. And they say, I reached my goal, I got here, I'm excited to get here. Why do I feel so sad, or anxious, or lonely? And they come into my office and they are perplexed by the fact that, since you've reached your goal, that, it doesn't feel so good. And so when we explore the whys and we realize that some of it has to do with loneliness and lack of structure and lack of purpose, then we begin to reevaluate, okay, so who can I now be as I continue to get older? Because it doesn't have to be what you saw, and because we are living now, the 90s are the highest growing group that's developing right now. So we have more people who are getting to their 90s. So when you retire, you have sometimes 30 years. A lot of people retire at 62. You have sometimes 30 or more years that not only you have to financially afford, but you also need to fill. That's a lot of years to fill without a plan. And so that is why it's important for us to make sure that we continue to plan. It's an ongoing process, and it's one that we refine over time as we get more information, because we may try some things and decide, this, the idea of this sounded really good, but when I go and volunteer with X, all I feel like I'm doing is moving paper around, and that to me is not enough. I need to feel like I'm making a difference in somebody's life. And if I don't mind moving maybe a few papers, but if I can't, actually have a one-to-one, face-to-face with people, then for me that's not enough. So it really is exploring all those different options that are out there to try to figure out what it is that is going to fit for you. And sometimes it means it may take a year or 2 or 3 to figure it out. We go through stages of retirement. You know, the first one is the honeymoon stage, which is, you know, usually lasts about 6 months. And they're excited, they have projects, okay, I always wanted to do this project, I had the basement project, I had this building project, I had this car project where I wanted to rebuild a car, maybe it takes a year. I wanted to play golf, or I wanna, you know, do bowling, be in a bowling league, and they do some of those things, and then they realize that that's great, but they still have a lot more time that they don't have filled, and so they need to figure out how else they want to get it done. They also have their normal stuff about eating and cleaning and all that kind of stuff, but that also only takes so much of your time, and unless you have structure, a lot of times that doesn't get done either. And I still have people coming into me and saying, I have all this time in the world, and yet I still can't get the stuff done that I wanted to do. So, so then we again we work on putting in some structure. It doesn't have to. It's not externally motivated. It has to be internally motivated at this point. But sometimes you have to put it in either your Google Calendar or your paper calendar so that you get it done. So who do you want to be now is the big question that people need to ask. And it's a fun, exciting time when you think about it, because we get to do a do-over. We get to do a lot of different do-overs. And there's no one that is going to judge your do-overs other than you. And so we need to be able to make those do-overs count, because we want to be able to evaluate what we learn when we try new things and figure out which things are working for me and which things aren't. So I don't know if there's any questions that are out there. I'd be happy to answer them either here, or you can always put them in the comments afterwards, and I will make sure I get back to you. I have two parts of my practice, and one is for people who are still beginning to explore retiring, and they may be in their 50s or they may be in their 60s, or sometimes I have the children of who actually find me for their parents because they're worried that they haven't really done any appropriate planning. So a lot of times I have the children of my either my clients or my coaching clients who end up contacting me for their parents or sometimes their grandparents, who they want somebody who is a coach for them to be able to help them figure it out. Or there are sometimes people who come into my psychotherapy practice, and we do it through there. And it depends on what's appropriate, because if you go into the psychotherapy practice, you have to get diagnosed with a mental illness. And if my coaching practice is, at this point, we are coming up with a course. The course is almost ready to launch, and it's called Designing My Retirement. It'll be for people to be able to take on their own, and then there will be different levels for people if they want to do group coaching or individual coaching with me beyond that. But that will be coming at the beginning of the new year, so I'm pretty excited about that. So, so at this point, I will finish up and let people know that I hope they have a great holiday. It is a little bit before Thanksgiving. I'm going to be going to visit my family for Thanksgiving, and I plan to be excited about doing my course at the beginning of the year. Bye.